If you are a traditional artist and you love your cadmium reds or your lemon yellows, then this file, Blobs of Joy 08 Pigments, should be quite interesting for you, because I've listed out a whole load of the most widely used, most popular pigments that you find in traditional art. Now, I'm recording this in Photoshop because I can get more things on screen that I want to show you, and I spent, I think it must have been around 2 months investigating a huge number of the kind of colours that you get in a traditional oil palette or watercolour palette, because I know from my own experience and from the experience of friends of mine who are traditional painters that especially when you're starting out with digital art and everything feels unfamiliar, it is nice to be able to look at a colour and say that is ultramarine or raw sienna or viridian. And that is all very nice, but I decided I would try and take this a few more steps down the digital road so that it is more useful for you. I'll zoom in to the top right of my screen and I'm going to get my colour picker and let's take a look at, say, yellow ochre. Come on, everybody knows yellow ochre. I am going to click on that colour to sample it. Look at the colour wheel just to the right. That is the colour of yellow ochre. And you can see the name at the top, but also underneath you have HSB, that stands for hue 39, that's the colour wheel. That's all the different hues that go to make up basically all the colours of the rainbow. But then you have S next to it, that's saturation of 75. If the hue is 39, then the saturation, that's how intense the colour is, that will be the most intense, that's completely grey with everything in between. And the B, well, that stands for the brightness, how light or dark it is. I wanted to give you a little bit more. So that circle in the middle of the square, that is the actual colour itself. But if you look at the square surrounding it, if you go to the right, you're getting a warmer version of yellow ochre. If you go to the left, you're getting a cooler version of yellow ochre. And if you go up, you get lighter versions, and if you go down, you get darker versions. These are slight variations, because maybe you found this when you're painting. You may think, well, I'm using yellow ochre or, say, raw sienna, and you think, I wouldn't mind cooling this down a little bit so that I can work with it. Well, there you go. Raw sienna cooled down, and you may decide I need a darker version, so just go down, and there's your darker, cooler version of the raw sienna. And I've done that for all of the various different hues on here. Now, if I zoom out, I've done these by order of hue. So if I start in the top left corner and go there, then come down and come here, and down and down and down to this point, these are all in order of hue. If you look at the H numbers underneath all the colours, you can see they all go in order. And when I get down to the very bottom one, quinacridone rose, just imagine I come all the way back up to the top. So it is the colour wheel but laid out side by side. The take from that is, if say you're using cadmium yellow, for example, and you want a warmer version of cadmium yellow but you'd like it in hue form, well, if you want warmer, you're going to go towards the left. If you want cooler, you're going to go towards the right. And this very bottom row, which is slightly offset, those are your neutral colours. Those are your Payne's grey or your ivory black or your sepia. But again, I've put in warmer and cooler versions of those colours and darker and lighter versions. Now, as with all the Blobs of Joy files, I suggest you call up this file, you take the colours that you want, and you put them down somewhere separate, and then you either get rid of this file or hide it, because this is so big, it's just going to get in the way of your painting. Okay, so here are the things to watch out for. I've given everything here a name. And if you are used to your real world painting, you will recognise many of these names. It was a very enjoyable couple of months spent researching all of this, in addition to the research I've done over the years for this. And one thing that is very clear is that different manufacturers have different ideas of what different colours should be. You take, for example, a colour like ultramarine. You can find videos on YouTube where people compare ultramarine from various different manufacturers, and there is a significant amount of variety in the colours that the different manufacturers choose. So if I'm used to Winsor & Newton ultramarine blue and you're using Schminke ultramarine blue, we're not going to have the same experience. And so when you look at these, you may be thinking, oh, come on, that's not the yellow ochre I recognize. The reason for that is different manufacturers have different ideas about what the colors actually are. I could have used the pigment colors, little color codes like PY9 or whatever, but if I was to do that, then most people wouldn't recognize those colors. Most people think in terms of cerulean or cadmium red. People know the names, so I gave the names. The second thing, and this is probably the most important point, I wanted to give traditional artists a familiar reference point to start practicing with, but these are pixels, not pigments. There is no chemical reaction going on with pixels. There are no fine granules to mix or separate, because it's pixels, not pigments. There are no fugitive colours, that is, colours that fade when they get exposed to light, because pixels don't do that. Pixels are light. And so I really hope that you as traditional artists, you find this a really useful starting point. But don't expect these to behave exactly the way the real world counterparts behave. In general, the more you want your digital art experience to be exactly the same as your traditional art experience, the more disappointed you're going to be. And sometimes it almost feels like the closer it gets to real world painting, the more you start to feel that something's off. And if I can make a suggestion, yeah, traditional pigments, great starting point, but then treat it as digital and revel in all the things that you can do with digital art that you can't do with traditional. Okay, so that is the little Blobs of Joy 08 traditional pigments, and I hope you get a lot of joy out of it.